and speaking in your life?
This meeting
You
is
may have
being
heard of
recorded.
Jeanne before, but if not, she was a 6'2" former North Carolina who used her talents as a speaker to share her humorous stories about life. She often used her height as her experience as a former Miss America contestant, her husband, who she lovingly called Left Brain, and her son Beaver in her stories. A little over 2 years ago, Marjane started on a quest to find more humor in her life by listening and learning from humorous speakers. One of those was Jeanne Robertson. Please welcome distinguished Toastmaster Marjane Taylor as she presents The Magic of Jeanne.
Thank you. In March 2020, fellow Find Your Funny member Gloria Darling and I had the privilege of seeing Jeanne Robertson in person in Tallahassee. It changed my life. It gave me a new perspective. I liked how Jeanne could take a simple story and find the humor in everyday situations. I want to be just like Jeanne when I grow up. So I'm going to tell you a shortened version, my version of one of her stories that is my favorite. And maybe it will become your favorite too. It's called Don't Send a Man to the Grocery Store. So in the South, and many of you live in the South, but in the South, when someone gets sick or passes away, and Jeanne would shake her head, kind of lower it like that. She said, as a little sign of respect, you bring food. And everybody knows you get more credit if you make it yourself. Now you can go down to Publix or the local grocery store. You can buy some chicken and put it on your own plate, but trust me, those ladies are gonna know that it's not your fried chicken. So Jeanne only makes one thing, small 7-Up pound cakes. Well, she had been out traveling and speaking. She came back and her husband, Left Brain, told her that they had a sick friend. She went to the freezer to get one of her little pound cakes and the supply was depleted. She didn't have a lot of time because she had another plane to catch later. So she told her husband, Left Brain, that he was going to need to go to the store to get the ingredients. He didn't want to. He said, I've got a badminton game coming up. Well, then he said, but if you can get me through the express lane, I'll go. She said, I'll get you through the express lane. So he left and she waited and she waited and she waited. And she thought he must have gone on to that badminton game. But here he came with 2 bags in his hands and 2 more over his arms. And he started putting ingredients out on the counter. He had 1 pound of margarine, 2 gigantic bottles of vanilla flavoring, 3 dozen eggs. And at this point, she thought they must have had a special because she only asked him to get 1 dozen. In the next sack, there were 2 big old tubs of shortening and 2 more in the next sack, 12 pounds total. In the 4th sack, she found her list. Now, she explained here that Left Brain is a smart man. In fact, you could say he's overeducated. He has a PhD, but if you have a left brain, it's gonna kick in on you at some point, and it kicked in at him at the grocery store. Now, for the first time ever, she had decided to number the items. So she looked at the list again. Number 4, a big tub thing of lard. She could hear him coming back. She looked at number 5. It was a 5-pound bag of sugar. So she knew he was coming in with 25 pounds of sugar. Number 6 was a 5-pound bag of all-purpose flour. 30 pounds of flour. He came in plopping down bags of flour. Bam, bam, bam. He got it all down and he says, one more trip. Jeannie went back to her list. Number 7 was a bottle of 7-Up. But she didn't want those big bottles because she knew if she just wanted to make one little pound cake, the rest of it would go stale before she could use it. So she asked for a 6-pack of those medium bottles. And she knew he was coming back in with 42 bottles of 7-Up. She was good. She didn't say anything. She just cleared a spot. Left Brain looked at her. He said, well, obviously they wouldn't let me go through the express lane. He got all the way out into the hallway and he came back. For the record, I found out what I had done, but by then she was ringing up the 7-Up and all those people behind me were laughing and I got to get to my badminton game. Well, if you want the full story as only Jeanne Robertson can tell it, just go to YouTube, search for "Don't Send a Man to the Grocery Store," and you can watch it there. I started learning a little bit more about Jeanne, and I found a book. As you can see, it's an older book, but it's called Humor, The Magic of Jeanne. 7 Potions for Developing a Sense of Humor. So I'm going to talk about that today, and I would like to ask if Sue could maybe I've got a little handout that has the 7 potions. Thank you, Sue. So number 1, laugh at yourself. I find this very easy to do. Jeanne said, accept the things about yourself that you can't change. In her instance, she was 6'2" tall. There's nothing she could do to change that. So she used it for humorous effect. In my case, I'm 5'2" tall. If I went to the grocery store, I'd have to take a step stool. Identify your unique characteristics and share your bloopers and blunders with others. Trust me, they can be very funny, even if they're embarrassing to you at the time. Number 2, look at the humor in everyday situations. Jeanne said she found a lot of humor when she traveled with airline and hotel personnel, cab drivers, other travelers, speaking situations. And she also found a lot of humor right where we can all find it, with our neighbors and our friends and our family. Try going to a family reunion sometime, you'll see what I mean. Another thing in the book she included was ask people for humor. What's the funniest thing that happened to you today? And here is something that I just blew my mind, this serendipitous turn of events when I was reading this book right here, page 72. Work with a humor buddy. And that's exactly what she called it. And no, I didn't know that before we started our Humor Buddy program here at Find Your Funny. But wow, work with a humor buddy. Number 3, create your own humor. Now, there's different ways you can do this. Jeanne tells a story in her book about once she became Miss North Carolina, her dad was very proud of her, and he always liked to chime in when somebody would say something to her and say, oh yeah, she's my daughter. Well, they were in the elevator one time and they got all the way to the 6th floor. Nobody had said anything yet about her being Miss North Carolina. And so he looked her straight in the eye and he said, say, aren't you Miss North Carolina? Which got the reaction he was looking for, because then everybody started saying things like, oh yeah, she's that tall one, the basketball player. And Jeanne, meanwhile, is thinking, we are gonna look like fools when we get off on the 12th floor together with matching luggage. Her dad was ahead of her though. He stopped the elevator on floor 11, took one of the suitcases, got off the elevator, but before the door closed, he turned around, looked her up and down, and said, "Well, honey, you must have one really good looking daddy." So he was able to create his own humor. Number 4 is associate with people who have a sense of humor. Jeanne didn't mean comedians, but people who just enjoy humor and are fun. You know, not necessarily people who think they're the life of every party, but this is also one of the reasons I wanted to join a humor club or help start a humor club so that I could hang around with people who like humor. Number 5, influence others to develop a sense of humor. And isn't that what we're all doing here? Number 6, see the humor in stressful, awkward, or unpleasant situations. And Jeanne had some questions that can help us with that. So number 1, can I provide some humor that will relieve tension and not provide stress for somebody else? Set the tone by your example. Number 2, will this be funny when I talk about it later? Is this the funny thing that I'm going to find today in my everyday situation? Is it something that I can add to a collection of humor that I'm keeping? And number 3, how would this situation appear if I wasn't directly involved? Now, for me, one of the things that happened to me that was definitely stressful and unpleasant, I talked about a few years ago in a humorous speech, but it was when I was canoeing and the canoe capsized. Well, it happened to capsize right where the guide had told us that an aggressive alligator had been spotted the day before. As you might imagine, I was quite stressed. I was looking around for this gator. Meanwhile, everything that was in the canoe was floating downstream and I'm chasing after it, trying to grab coolers and the paddle and everything else, when all of a sudden I felt something behind my leg. And I'm thinking, it's that aggressive alligator. And I'm thinking, what do you do with an aggressive alligator? You punch it, right? So I turned around to go punch the alligator, only to find out it was my beach towel. So find the humor in those situations that are uncomfortable. And last, take humor breaks or collect humor cues. And Jeanne said she used a few minutes every day to just sit back, relax, and refer to what she called her humor cues and laugh. She kept a little collection of things that made her laugh. She said they wouldn't necessarily make anyone else laugh. They were just for her. So they were personal experiences, stories, jokes. She just jot down a few words as reminders. In fact, she said there were a few things that happened between her and her husband, left brain, that no one else would have thought was funny. No one else would have gotten it. But the minute she could write down 2 or 3 words and just bust out laughing. So write those humor cues down and refer to them every day. Another thing that I have done is I use social media. And so a lot of you probably have seen, I'll find the funny things on social media. I also have a collection of jokes that I like that I've kept for years now. So just keep those little stories and jokes. As Jeanne would say, taking a humor break each day with your humor cues is an important step to developing a sense of humor. It may even result in a healthier, happier life. At this point, I'd like to ask if anyone has any specific questions about humor or adding humor, or Jeanne Robertson. And I may not see if your hand is up, so if you raise your electronic hand, it may work better.
Paula does.
Paula.
I have a question. Thank you, Tom. All right. I'm not going to balk at that one, but I will ask a question. When Jeanne was in that elevator, I can imagine the surprise when the man, her father, who got off, said something about, wow, your father must be a good-looking guy. How did she react? I mean, did she play along? I'm guessing she did. I think that would be hysterical for her to hear that and not laugh.
She didn't specifically say, but just from other things I've read that she wrote and things that happened in her life, I'm pretty sure she would have just played right along with it, because even growing up, there were instances where those sort of things both of her parents had a great sense of humor. And so there were a lot of little things that happened over the years. Is there any other question?
Yes, Marjane.
Okay.
Vivian here.
Vivian.
Yes. Please give me some advice. In the office of my cousin, she used to have a boss with a great sense of humor. And so he encouraged the staff, instead of arguing with each other, find the humor and see if you can solve it among yourselves. So well and good. That's a backstory. He eventually moves to another state and they have a new boss. Absolutely no sense of humor, does not get any joke. Take note, does not allow laughing during office hours because they're not getting paid to laugh. And now everybody's in a state of shock because they keep getting memos, they keep getting scolded about this is not a comedy club. What to do now? It's not healthy, right? Laughter is still the best medicine. What to do when the boss is like that and is a know-it-all with extreme power and super titles?
Wow, he really needs to lighten up.
Yeah.
That's a tough one. And I think that one of the things that may help, and maybe other people have different ideas, but if there's someone that's close enough to actually have a serious heart-to-heart talk with them, maybe they could talk about the importance of humor and how it can help to relieve tension in the workplace, how it can actually make people more creative in their work. And I don't know what type of work it is. Maybe that's a good thing. Maybe it's not a good thing, but there are studies that have been done and shown about that. So, maybe just someone who has the ability to get through to him, to talk to him, and let some of the studies that have been done kind of prove to him that humor is helpful in a workplace. All right, I think that unless there's any other question, I want to just reiterate the 7 potions, which should be on the handout that's in chat. So 1, laugh at yourself, look at the humor in everyday situations, create your own humor, associate with people who have a sense of humor, influence others to develop a sense of humor, see the humor in those stressful, awkward, unpleasant situations, and take humor breaks, collect humor cues. So one of the things that happened with Jeanne, I really wanted to invite her, and I did invite her to be a guest educational headliner, but as you know, March 2020 was the beginning of COVID. So she wasn't traveling right then. Unfortunately, Jeanne passed away before she could become our guest educational headliner. And the sad thing about that is that I was all out of ingredients to make a 7-Up pound cake. I certainly wouldn't have sent a man to the grocery store for them, but I probably would have taken my own step stool. Thank you.
Thank you, Marjane. Almost going into extra innings there, Miss Don't Time Me, but we will get back on.